Welcome back to the Cardboard Crash Course. This is Ethan, and I'm talking about the Ember-Eyed Behemoth today. This is a spirit from the Nature Incarnate expansion for Spirit Island, shown up here. This is easily one of my new favorite spirits from this expansion, and really shows off the new Incarna mechanic to its full potential. It's basically this giant, lumbering behemoth, and it has a slow but consistent playstyle, using its Incarna to stomp around the island and smash invaders. It gains benefits from spread out sacred sites, and it can move long distances to its sacred sites. They say it has a complexity of moderate. Honestly, I feel like this complexity might even be lower. The only reason why it's moderate in the first place is because it uses the Incarna. Now, this Incarna is definitely a step up in terms of complexity just to understand what it is, but once you do understand what it is, I feel like this is a fairly easy spirit to grasp. This is especially shown because of this here, the summary of powers. It's very offensive and doesn't have really much else in terms of anything going on. I think that's fair because really you're just going to want to be stomping everything, kind of like how Lightning Swift Strike just zaps everything in the base game. But this is even more straightforward than that. So it uses its Incarna, as well as Badlands and Wilds. Remember, Wilds skip exploration, and Badlands increases instances of damage to both Dahan and invaders. Its setup is that you put 2 presents and its Incarna in the highest number wetland on your starting board that is adjacent to any jungle. Remember that you always put the Incarna unempowered side face up to begin. We eventually will be able to empower it using its abilities, but for now it just acts as a presence. You also start the game with its 4 unique power cards like most spirits and 0 energy. So let's flip over to the other side and see what we've got going on. Alright, so on the front side of the spirit board, I like to talk about the special rules here first, and then we can move into growth options, presence tracks, and its innate powers, as well as its power cards later. Its first special rule is called the Behemoth Rises. It's pretty straightforward. You have an Incarna, which is this here. Once per turn, during the spirit fast or slow phase, you can either push the Incarna, or add or move it to any of your sacred sites around the island. Now, your Incarna, like I said, starts unempowered, but we'll be able to empower it using a growth option. Once it becomes empowered, you're going to not only be able to treat it as a presence, but also as a sacred site. This is really important for a lot of its power abilities and just powers up any major powers you might grab as well. Its second special is Unrelenting Strides. On any turn that you don't use innate powers, so not the smash, stomp, and flatten here, you can use the Behemoth Rises an additional time. Basically, if you're not actually smashing anything, you can move him twice. So that's either teleporting to a sacred site and then moving from there, or teleporting twice, or just moving twice. It's whatever combination you'd like on either the slow or fast phase. Moving on to its growth options here, we have 4 growth options, which is really kind of funny and unique, especially considering this last one. So the first one is on reclaim, you're going to get a power card. Now I suggest getting minor powers early on and drafting for as many ones with fire as possible, as we'll see in just a minute. Its second growth option is going to be really powerful, because it's going to add a presence to a jungle or land with your presence already. And then from range 0 from there, you can add another presence. So up to 3, you can basically build a sacred site. And because you start the game already with a sacred site, you're not going to have to worry about that starting land right away, and you can start spreading those sacred sites out really far in order to teleport your Incarna to them. So pretty easy to understand there. Its third growth option is gaining a power card, adding a presence, and gaining 3 energy. But unfortunately, it does come with a downside here that you have to discard a power card with fire. Now remember, you do as much as possible. So if you don't have any fire cards in your hand when this goes off, you won't actually have to discard anything. Clear your hand of all the fire and then start gaining a ton of energy and new cards off of this. And it lets you add a presence, so you can start expanding slowly. This is the really interesting one, however. This is a max 1 per game growth option. You can reclaim all the power cards in your discard pile, but only with fire elements on them. You can empower your Incarna, turning it into a sacred site, and also giving you a special ability, as we'll talk about in a second. And you can move your Incarna up to 1. Now that last part is really gravy, but this Empower is going to boost you up for a huge chunk of the game. I really think this first option in it is better late game, because grabbing as many cards as possible with that reclaim is better, obviously, but you can also activate it early game in order to empower your Karna early and get as much out of Stomp, Smash, and Flatten, its innate power, which we'll talk about in a second, as possible. It's really up to you in the situation when you activate it, but you can never do it again, so you won't get that free move unless you're using Behemoth Rises again during the game, so keep that in mind. I think this is honestly its most complex part of this whole spirit, but really it's just kind of like a super ability that easily explains how empowering an Encarta works. Now its presence tracks. So it starts at 0 energy and 1 card play, but it goes all the way up to 5 energy and 4 card plays, which is honestly pretty average, but it has a lot of elements along the way. 3 fire elements, an earth, and a plant. And it's all going to boost you up towards your innate power. Like I said, this is really kind of a low complexity spirit with an Incarna that boosts it up to moderate. So don't think about this too hard. You're going to be using that growth 2 to boost you up to 2 energy or to 2 card plays right away, or to 1 and 2, and you're just going to consistently keep building that up until you either need more power cards or need to empower your Incarna. And this last growth, this reclaim cards and gain a power card, honestly is not going to have to happen too often, except in the late game where you start getting into a comfortable rhythm. This is really an easy spirit to understand because the elements on its track are immediately useful for what's on the bottom of the board, which we'll talk about now. Its innate power, Smash, Stomp, and Flatten, is a slow speed, and it has to go to the land with your Incarna in it. So this is not a range out of that land, it's only that land. So it is a 2 fire and 1 earth for 2 damage, 1 more fire and a plant for another damage and push a Dahan, another fire and another earth for another damage and a fear, and another fire and another plant for 2 damage and 2 more damage to Dahan. So ultimately this is going to be 6 damage and then 2 damage to Dahan, pushing one of them out before that, and a fear generation. So if you're hitting 2 cities, you're going to be able to generate up to 5 fear with this. But you can generate up to 10 in the best case scenarios because of this extra special rule here. If your Incarna is empowered, you may repeat this power once each turn. And you can take other actions before repeating, including the Behemoth Rises, which is a great little bonus there. So you can do this huge smash at the slow phase, then move him 1, or teleport him to a sacred site, and then smash again. Absolutely fun, and tons of utility, even though it's just pure damage. So let's move on to its 4 power cards here. The first one is Surging Lahar. It is a fire, water, and earth, so getting you kind of towards that innate power with a little bit of bonus of water there for flexibility. It's 2 cost, speed, slow, range of 1 from a sacred site that can target any land, and it does 2 damage, but if your presence is present, add a Badlands. So the fact that this adds a Badlands is going to boost up all of your innate power and all the rest of your power cards, including this one used a little bit later, to do extra damage to the board. Just really simple. The next one is Terrifying Rampage, a 1 energy, fast power that gives you a fire and an earth for your innate power, plus a flex element of a moon. It has a range of 1, it can target any land, and it gives you 1 fear generation, and then 2 invaders don't participate in Ravage, but then it pushes 3 Dahan. So that push 3 Dahan is getting them out of the way of this ability here, especially if you max that out. And it's also kind of a pseudo strife. Really kind of cancels an entire invader action as long as you're using it correctly. Really flexible there. Its 3rd out of 4 is Blazing Intimidation. It's a fire and a plant for that innate, plus a flex element of an animal. It's fast, and has a range of 1. It generates a fear, then pushes 2 explorers or towns to a land without your Incarna. You might be thinking, why would I want to push them to a land without it if I'm just going to smash them anyway? But this does it in the fast phase, so it gets them out of the way of ravaging, and is another way to easily cancel that. Plus a little bit of fear generation isn't too bad. Now its final card, and my favorite, is a 0 energy cost, slow power, that gives you all 3 of the icons that you're going to need for its innate power, plus a moon, and you target another spirit. It's called Exaltation of Grasping Roots. So target spirit may add a wilds to one of their lands, and then you may do likewise. Keep in mind, in a solo game, when you target another player, you can target yourself. So yes, you each get one in a multiplayer game, but you actually get 2 wherever you want in a solo game. And because you're spreading your presence so fast throughout the lands, adding these wilds to one of your lands is actually going to be very flexible. So those are really the only 2 cards that use either wilds or badlands here. Really not too complicated in terms of learning this spirit, even though it says they're pretty good at using this on the backside of its board. So a couple of tips with him is to try to get some of those major powers and even minor ones that threshold with moons, because of that flex on 2 different cards of yours, especially because every 4 of his cards have that fire element, so you'll be able to reclaim all of his innate powers with that once per game growth option there. He's an incredibly straightforward, really fun spirit that I've been having a ton of enjoyment with lately. He's a great one to jump into, even if this is your first or second time playing Spirit Island, or if you just want to get into this new Incarna mechanic, because it's a great way to show an easy way to empower it, a simple way to move it around, and gives it a big bonus while also being able to do a lot of damage with his powers in his sacred sites that aren't his Incarna. If you like this video, go ahead and leave which spirit you want me to do next, or any aspects that you'd like. Or, if you really loved it, consider being a patron or joining our Discord to come talk to me directly. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and go protect your island. Bye-bye now.